Welcome to the Woodridge Baptist Church podcast. For more information about what's happening in the life of our church, visit our website at www.woodridge.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Well, friends, over this last month, we have been praying together. You know, we had the devotionals that Hugh, our discipleship pastor, wrote, and that we would be on those devotionals every day together, that we would be praying together, just to see what it is that the Lord would lay on our heart for the future of the church. And honestly, that's just between each of us and God, isn't it? You know, that what the Lord would lay on your heart to do for the future work of this church and in this community. Alan, who was just in the video, is a part of the long-range planning committee. And there are others. I mean, just a huge thanks, because they have put in a tremendous amount of hours already. And honestly, we haven't even started like any of the building yet. But it's just been an extraordinary amount of hours. You know, Greg Wallace, John Weisenbaker, Alan Bishop, who you just saw, Randy Broom, Carlos Munoz, Lamar Alexander, Tony Draper, Kathy Burris, Jill Poland, Tiny, who is our children's pastor. I don't know if you know this, but he was an engineer and went out of engineering to go into ministry. He's been invaluable for this. Ed, our executive pastor, has been absolutely amazing in the process. But we really feel like we're only getting started here. There's so much more to go. But I was thinking this week on how we even got to this place. And it's a bit of a story. I mean, I don't know, for those of you that you probably don't know, we actually had plans to build on North Park. We have land on North Park. And to accommodate the ministry that was happening here and the growing ministry, we had plans that we'd even presented to the church to build on that property over there. And then a flood happened. And we're like, well, we need to slow this down a little bit, because especially over in that area on North Park, there was a community where 500 homes had been flooded. And I just thought, you know, we need to stop, because if we want to get a bad reputation in this community, how about we go cut all the trees down over there right after a flood happened? It just didn't. We are here to bless this community. That's what we're here for. And so we kind of stopped. Then we had another idea, which was, hey, this back lot and the parking lot, we could actually maybe build over there. And so we came up with a new plan. And when the new plan, we get in front of the church and we talk about it. And then I walk out on a Sunday morning and we didn't have any parking spots. And I was like, well, okay, so we can't build there, because I don't know where y'all would go, so we need to keep the parking. And it just got to be just a tremendous amount of fun. Like right when we would get an idea, something would happen, and it would just slow everything down. And in the process of all of this, I was meeting with people like Alan Bishop and Greg Wallace over at the land on North Park at about 6 in the morning on Friday mornings, and we would just pray together. And we would say, hey, Lord, whatever you want to do, but you just need to let us know. Like, let us know what it is, because that's what we want to. And there was just this bit of a hiccup, you know, like you're like, all right, we've gone through 2 different iterations now, and then something, bam, hits, and it just stops it. It's almost like Paul in his ministry. I wanted to go here, but I got hindered. It felt like that. I'm going to admit, on the front end, it was a bit irritating, but whatever, that's okay. So we just stopped what we were doing. And I started to walk around this building that we're in. Just kind of in an afternoon, I was kind of walking around the perimeter of the space and whatnot. And I remembered a joke that somebody had said to me, especially as you get over by the shelter, because we had paid for quite a lot of repairs on the roof and everything. It just seemed like it was never ending for the original part of the church. And I remembered what somebody had said to me. I swear there's one nail that is holding that part of the church up, that if we found it and pulled it, that thing is going to go down. And I kind of laughed about it, but as I continued to walk around the perimeter of the place, it just kind of went boom. I thought, okay, we know we have to do something to accommodate what's happening here. It's not Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come. They're already here. We need to figure something out. And so it kind of hit me. What if we pulled the nail on the shelter? What if we did that? So I met with Greg Wallace, you know, who's my predecessor and longtime pastor here, and I sat down and I said, I have an idea that might be crazy. And if it's the worst idea you've ever heard in your life, say, that's the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. And so I pitched it to him. And he said, I think this is the way we need to go. And so I did it with other people, like a John Weisenbaker and others. I'm like, hey, please speak to this. If you think this is nuts, say, I think this is nuts, and you need to rethink everything. But every step along the way, it was like, this is the way we need to go. This is what's going to set us up for the future ministry of the church. So that's what happened. We developed a plan to knock it down and to build and to do something new. We had a town hall. We went into Sunday school classes for more than a month so that on a smaller scale, we could talk together. We could ask questions together. We voted on this. And everybody said, you know what? This is the way we're supposed to go. And that's why we're having the morning that we're having this morning, is because this is kind of the final commitment Sunday for the future work and ministry of the church. I was thinking, especially as I was going through Greece and Turkey over these last couple of weeks with people, a number of things have been built over the years. It was really impressive to stand in some of those places and to see where God had worked. You read the Bible, and just a few things have been built over the years for ministry. I mean, when you think of the Temple of Solomon, Solomon considered the building of the temple to be his life's greatest achievement, which, by the way, I probably would too. It was incredibly impressive. What we're doing is definitely less than that. It was a magnificent structure. It took 150,000 laborers and more than 8 years to build this thing. That's amazing. Much of it was layered in gold, much like what we're going to be building here. I've also asked for designs for the pastor's spa and retreat, but I keep getting shot down for that, but whatever. When you read 1 Kings, it tells us that Solomon used more than 4,000 tons of gold and 40,000 tons of silver in the construction of the temple. One scholar that I was reading said the amount of gold Solomon used in the temple was about 4 to 5% of all the gold ever mined on earth. That blew my mind. As in, here's a way of getting it. Of all the gold we've ever mined on earth, 1/20th of it was in one building. That's incredible. I mean, what we're trying to do is kind of much smaller on a scale, wouldn't you agree? And that doesn't even account for the other things, like the stones that lined the walls, marble and onyx and rubies and emeralds. They were layered all over the walls. This thing had some bling power, that's all I'm saying. The temple had some bling power. And that doesn't even factor in the other stuff that just as you continue to read the word, where people wanted to put a structure that was a stable presence, where it was a visible space where the work of God would happen. And people knew what it stood for. What I've prayed for our church over all the years, and I'll continue to, is that people drive by, they know exactly what we stand for. They know exactly why we're here. And this is what connects us to our goal. Our goal in this project has been to raise $10 million. We're about $6.5 million. We're trying to close a gap of about $3.5 million on the project. And we've worked hard, and we've tried to be wise stewards with what you have entrusted to us over the years. I mean, for years, any budget overage, knowing that we were going to be pitching this, put it over here. Let's put it to the future. Put it over here. Let's put it to the future. And we're in the final stages. Just this week, I had some good calls, coming back in from the study trip and to talk with our broker. It looks like the land is finally going to sell. I mean, that by itself has been going on forever. But it looks like it's good. It looks like it's good. And what that could mean is $5 million could go in our bank on around October 15th, specifically toward this. That's amazing to me. That's amazing to me. I was talking with friends that are in business, and they're like, if we could have 25% of the capital up front, we're like, feel good to go. And I was like, well, the good news is we're well beyond that, even before we were starting it, assuming the land could sell. And here we are. It looks like it's going to go through. So the plan A, and working with our long-range planning committee, plan A was to have this campaign so that we don't have to borrow a red cent. We can just go and build and move forward. And that's why we set the goal that we did. But the heart behind it has been the heart of this church the whole time. Nothing has changed. We want to see every person in the Kingwood area, literally area, to be a fully devoted follower of Jesus Christ. That's it. We want to reach the unsaved. We want to reach the unchurched. And we want for people that know Jesus to grow deeper in their relationship with him. You go, why do you exist? That's it. That's really it. We're like Chick-fil-A. They do chicken. That's what they do. If you go in and try to order a burger, they're like, you're in the wrong place. You know what I'm saying? They do Jesus chicken. That's what they do. We know who we are. we know what we do, and we're moving forward with it. That's the idea. We want to see a Jesus movement among the people of Kingwood and in this area, and that this church, and I love where we're set, because we're set in the community. We're set right smack in the community, and I love that. We want this place to be a home for the people of our community. It's what we want it to be, and to increase our footprint for discipleship among our adults, our students, and our kids. That's why we exist. So we know we sell chicken. You know what I'm saying? We don't do all the other stuff. We sell chicken here. Really what we do is we sell Jesus here, but you get the idea. You're following the connection? And this is our hope in the project, is to see what we do in this campaign. It is a seed. It's a seed. I remember some years ago, my grandmother was up in age. She almost hit 100, y'all. I mean, that's a good ride, don't you think? You know, she was up in age, and I remember she went ahead for my home church, the church that I grew up in Mineola, Texas. She went ahead and gave to the church what she intended to give to the church after she had passed away. And the reason that she did it was because the need of the church was already evident, and it was there specifically for the student ministry. Here's the thing, a lot of times we give and we don't see the fruit of the giving. It's just true. You know, you go to another part of the world and you give the gospel to people, and then you leave, and then you get a word 5 years later. Do you remember this person that you talked with? It was a journey, but they came to the Lord. You know, sometimes we plant the seed and we physically with our eyes don't necessarily see the result. But it reminded me something true from Scripture. You know, when you think of like a mustard seed, which is considered to be one of the smallest seeds, mustard trees have been found in various locations throughout the world. And even though it's one of the smallest seeds, the trees can grow up to 12 to 15 feet from something so small. From something so small. Never underestimate the power of what you give for the impact of what can come. I mean, the truth is, I think you'll agree with me on this, we give to the things we value. Is that fair? We give to the things that we value. We do. And the other thing that kind of hit me this week, and just honestly, just any time there's something like this going on, is how many of you feel pulled in about 50 different directions with where you give? I mean, go ahead and raise your hand. Go ahead and raise your hand. I mean, we've got, well, Avery's in college, skip her, but we've got 3 kids in high school right now. Inevitably, what's going to happen in each of the schools is that they're going to have a giving goal. Do you know what I'm talking about? Every single school in this area, we want to get another $50,000. And I'm probably going to get some message about giving to some school, or all of them, maybe all at the same time. We can feel pulled in different directions. Just this week, as I was thinking about it, I personally had 10 different requests to give to things. 10, that was this week. And I was out of the country for half of it. You know, it's like everything. One was to give to clean and sustainable water. That's a good thing in Africa. That's a good thing. Our schools, okay. There was a church plant that reached out to me. Would I be willing to give to them? How about this one? My alma maters, which, by the way, is the German word for other mothers. My alma maters have been reaching out. Hello. Right? We would love for you to get, and there it is. And I counted up, there were 10 of them. There were 10 of them. Think about this. The point we give to what we value. Are y'all with me? This year, the club sports industry will clear about $40 billion. Club sports. And by the way, I had a daughter that played club volleyball. I get it. $40 billion this year. I was reading the Houston Chronicle. University of Texas fans, y'all out there? They're going to spend $40 million on their football team this year to pay their players. Just football. Now, to be fair, because many of you know I'm an Aggie, A&M is going to be spending $50.5 million on all of their sports. What we don't know is how they divvy it up, because that apparently wasn't reported, but whatever. That's a pretty good chunk of change. Wouldn't you agree with me? $50.5 million, right? That's a lot of money. We give to what we value. We give to the things that we value. It's just true. But it really got me thinking in terms of sports, who's the top bringer-inner of money? And it's, if those of you don't, it's Oregon. It's the University of Oregon. I don't know if we have any Duck fans out there, but whatever. They're the ones really hauling it in. Part of the reason is because Phil Knight, who heads up Nike, is from the University of Oregon, and they were estimating that before it's all said done, over a period of, I forget how many years, $969 million for all the sports. And I don't mean for over a 50-year period, I'm talking about like recently. We give to what we value. Obviously, people at Oregon value their sports, and A&M, and Texas, and other places. You get the idea. But when you look in Scripture, you see some other examples of people that believed, and they gave to what they valued. If you, for example, were to look at Luke's gospel in the first 4 verses, he mentions a guy named Theophilus. What a number of New Testament scholars think, or they think who Theophilus was he was the guy that bankrolled Luke to go and get the eyewitness accounts so that he could write his gospel, and not just his gospel, but also the book of Acts, because he's mentioned again in the book of Acts. And you could see Luke and Acts almost as a report that's given to Theophilus. This is what I found, and this is what came as a result of your investment. That's Theophilus. Or even if you were to look, for example, in Philippians, you think of Paul. Paul is the greatest missionary in the history of the world. I'm convinced of that. But if you really follow his life, Paul went over 10,000 miles, mostly by foot, to share Jesus with people, mostly by foot. But he mentions people in his letters. For example, if you read Acts, or even if you look at Philippians, they were some people that sent money to Paul for pay for his travels and to pay for his ministry. Somebody had to support the guy in his work. Somebody had to do it. And even if you look at it, 10 years later, they were still supporting. From the time that they started, 10 years later, they were still supporting him, even though, as he said to them, I'm in chains. I'm in chains. So even though he had been arrested and things weren't going well, at least in that sense, they never quit on him. They continued to support him. The truth is, everybody, we give to what we believe in. We give to what we value. It's just true. Here's what Paul said in Philippians 4:17. He said to them, I don't seek the gift itself, but the profit it increases to your account. But the profit it increases to your account. In other words, this was their way of partnering in the ministry, not for his own gain, but so that the gospel could be advanced. And they were a part of it, even in that way. So as I think about how we're going forward, I think this is true. If we don't put a seed in the ground, there is nothing to grow. There's nothing to grow. There's no source to grow from. And I'd hoped that in this process, that's exactly how we would see everything. And it's also why we've taken the approach that we have. I wasn't going to be making calls to specific people and say, hey, you know what, you need to give more. I'm just not going to do it. The whole time, the heart behind this, for me, for our staff, for our long-range planning committee, is that you would spend time in the Lord and ask this simple question, what do you want me to do to make this happen? And that you would do it. That's it. We have entrusted that whole thing to each one of us as a church family for where we're going in the future work of this church and in this community, and honestly, around the world, because we're not stopping it. There's only more to come. If we don't put a seed in the ground, there's just nothing to grow. The scripture that just hit me the most as we began this whole thing was Psalm 105. The Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting, and his faithfulness continues through all generations. My expectation, I call it a hunch, but this is my expectation, is that what we're doing in this, and I hope this is true, in the way that God has entrusted me to lead this church and in a responsible way, at some point Moses has to hand it off to Joshua. Do you understand what I'm saying? My time's limited. I don't know what it is. I don't have a clue. I don't care. It's limited. But my goal in all of this is that we would be a healthy church, committed to impacting this community, that we would personally be fully devoted followers of Jesus and trust that the rest of it was just going to fall into place because we are. Trusting that. And I think that's a part of what this is that there's going to be somebody that eventually is going to come behind me. And what I hope for them is similar to the way that my friend Greg Wallace handed things off to me. He handed things off pretty well so that I could take it and I could run. And I want the same thing for whoever's coming after, whenever that is. It's not like next week. Don't send an email. That's not what I'm saying. I want to hand things off even better than when I got here so that the kingdom work can go even further than I could have ever dreamed or imagined. That's what I already pray for beyond me, is that this is only the start. And maybe like a seed that you put in the ground, you might not see the mustard tree at 12 to 15 feet. And I might not either. And that's okay. You know why? Because it isn't about me. None of this is about me. It's about Jesus. And so this morning is our final commitment Sunday. This is what I'm kind of putting in front of you, is that for those of you that haven't made the commitment to join in what we were doing, is that you would answer this simple question: Lord, what do you want me to do? And you would just do it. You would do it. That's what today is about. And so I'm entrusting it to you. So as we go into a time of prayer, this is how I want us to pray today. I get it. Today's a little bit different. We'll do normal sermon stuff next week. All right, good. Good. But this is how I want us to pray. And I hope very much in line with the way that you've been praying over the last month with the devotionals, like every day. But as we go into the time of prayer and before we worship, could you pray for this? Could you pray that the Lord would provide every resource that we need for this to come about? Could you pray for that in this time? Could you also pray for all of the people that honestly some of us may never see, we may never see it, that'll be coming into this church, and that they would encounter the living Christ as they do, and that their lives would be changed? Those are the two things I'm inviting you to pray for this morning. And then the third is just for yourself. For those of you that haven't made a commitment, just honest from the heart prayer. Hey, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And then I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. That's what this time of prayer is for today. Now, if you walked into the place and you've never met Christ, we had prayed that you would. I gave my life to Jesus as 11 years old. 11 years old. And I will never forget that day. This is basically what I knew, because I'm 11, so there was only so much processing going on. You understand what I'm saying? This is what I knew. I knew my sin was real. I knew that. I knew his grace was real too. And that was the day that it just kind of went upside my head, that I needed him. Like I really needed him. And that all I could do was to say, I don't deserve this, but if you would forgive me, the rest of my life is yours. It's yours. And he did. And he did. So if you've walked into this place and what you brought into this place was a lot of hurt and a lot of sin, I have good news for you. The same Lord that forgave me when I was 11 years old will forgive you today if you ask him. So in this time of prayer, I'm inviting all of you to respond in the way that you pray and to respond to the invitation to Jesus to receive him today. Let's pray.
We hope you have enjoyed the podcast. For more information about our church, visit www.woodridge.org.